The European migrant crisis, also known as the refugee crisis, was a period characterized by high numbers of people arriving in the European Union overseas from across the Mediterranean Sea or overland through Southeast Europe. In March 2019, the European Commission declared the migrant crisis to be at an end. Although displaced people continued to arrive, the migrant crisis was part of a pattern of increased forced migration to Europe from other continents, which is said to have begun in 2014. At the peak of the crisis in 2015, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and Iraqi. By 2019, the number of displaced arrivals to the Mediterranean had dropped to 129,663 people. Many refugees that arrived in Italy and Greece came from countries where armed conflict was ongoing, or which otherwise were considered to be refugee-producing, and for whom international protection is needed. The collapse of border controls during the Libyan civil war abetted human smuggling through Libya, with the Libya route used by huge numbers of people. Of the migrants arriving in Europe by sea in 2015, 58% were males over 18 years of age, 17% were females over 18, and the remaining 25% were under 18. The number of deaths at sea rose to record levels in April 2015, when 5 boats carrying approximately 2,000 migrants to Europe sank in the Mediterranean Sea, with the combined death toll estimated at more than 1,200 people. The shipwrecks took place during conflicts and refugee crises in several greater Middle Eastern and African countries, which increased the total number of forcibly displaced people worldwide at the end of 2014 to almost 60 million, the highest level since World War II. The BBC used the term migrant to represent all the people on the move during this period in its review articles published in 2016, Migrant Crisis, Migration to Europe Explained, and 2015, Europe Migrant Crisis. According to the BBC, the crisis included people who had not yet applied for asylum, refugees, and economic migrants. According to the UNHCR, the EU countries with the biggest numbers of recognized refugees at the end of 2014 were France and the United Kingdom. Prior to 2014, the number of unofficial border crossing by sea and land detected by Frontex at the external borders of the EU peaked at a total of 141,051 in 2011. Eurostat reported EU member states received over 1.2 million first-time asylum applications in 2015, more than twice as the previous year. 4 states received around 2/3 of the EU's asylum applications in 2015, with Hungary, Sweden and Austria being the top recipients of asylum applications per capita. More than 1 million migrants crossed the Mediterranean Sea in 2015, considerably dropping to 364,000 in 2016, before decreasing further in 2017. According to the UN, an estimated 362,000 refugees and migrants risked their lives crossing the Mediterranean Sea in 2016, with 181,400 people arriving in Italy and 173,450 in Greece. In the first half of 2017, over 105,000 refugees and migrants entered Europe. Several serious accidents and deaths occurred in Europe as a result of migrant smuggling since 1997, 2 in the Mediterranean Sea due to the capsizing of crowded and unseaworthy migrant smuggling vessels, and some on European soil due to the use of standard cargo trucks by smugglers to transport illegal migrants. The vast majority of deaths occurred while persons were being illegally smuggled across the Mediterranean and Aegean Seas. More than 34,000 migrants and refugees have died trying to get to Europe since 1993. According to the UNHCR World Migration Report 2020, 2 of the main drivers for the increased displacement of people are disasters and conflict. Some of the economic migration from West Africa originated from the consequences of land degradation due to climate change. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, most of the people who arrived in Europe in 2015 were refugees fleeing war and persecution in countries such as Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq and Eritrea. 84% of Mediterranean Sea arrivals in 2015 came from the world's top 10 refugee-producing countries. Wars fueling the migrant crisis are the Syrian civil war, the Iraq war, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Somalia and the war in Darfur. Refugees from Eritrea, one of the most repressive states in the world, fled from indefinite military conscription and forced labor. Some ethnicities or religions are more represented among the migrants than others. For instance, Kurds make up 80–90% of all Turkish refugees in Germany. Refugees coming from the Middle East tended to seek asylum in Europe. In 2015, over 80% of the refugees who arrived in Europe by sea came from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Routes in which these refugees face while attempting to arrive in Europe are usually extremely dangerous. The jeopardy to endure such routes supported the arguments behind certain refugees' preferential motorweight